Hello friends, I'm Elle and this is Kenny, and we are the creators of Grow Students, the youth ministry curriculum and annual strategy from Stuff You Can Use. In this video, we are going to show you how to strategically plan an entire year of youth ministry in 6 key areas: discipleship, teaching, environments, events, families, and volunteers.
All right, we're going to use a lot of examples from Grow in this video, but you don't actually have to use Grow curriculum in order to find this video helpful. Whether you use our curriculum or not, this video will teach you a strategy that you can use, and we're going to share it all with you, all of our secrets, everything, because we like you.
That's true. But if you are using Grow curriculum in your ministry, this video is going to give you a really big head start in planning your year. It's going to help you see how all of the pieces of your curriculum fit together and why we place them all on the calendar in the places that we have.
Yes, and now you could watch this video on your own, but we highly recommend going through this video with some other members of your team so that you can all collaboratively plan your year together. For you Grow users, we made this easy by giving you physical and printable versions of all the cards you see in this video so you can build your own board. And in fact, right now, you're seeing some calendars that Grow users have made for their own ministries.
They're so pretty. And just a reminder, everything that you will hear about in this video is actually available as a resource that you can customize and use this year through Grow curriculum. That means every single teaching series, teaching theme, event, discipleship activity, all the meetings, discussions, conversations, celebrations, everything is included in volume 7 of Grow curriculum. So if you are not only looking for the strategy that we're going to walk through in this video, but also the resources to pull it all off, just head to growcurriculum.org for free samples and more info. Okay, ready to get started? Let's do it.
All right, let's go over these 6 key areas again. We've got discipleship, teaching, events, environments, volunteers, and families. And right now, we're going to start by unpacking our annual discipleship strategy.
Yeah, and we start with the discipleship strategy because we want spiritual growth to be the lens through which we see everything else that we're going to do this year. So your church might have its own approach to discipleship and spiritual formation, but here's how we approach it and Grow. And feel free to borrow this if it works for you. Now, we believe there are 4 spiritual habits that help all of us, kids and teenagers included, grow closer to God. And they are spend time with God, spend time with others, know and use your gifts, and share your story.
These 4 habits aren't anything new, and you may already be talking about them in your own unique way at your church. So feel free to change the language to fit your specific context because the words are not the important thing here. What is important is making a plan to help kids and teenagers engage in these 4 spiritual habits on a regular basis, year after year, so that they can continue to grow closer to God.
So in the Grow annual strategy, we break our year into 4 quarters and assign 1 spiritual habit to each of those quarters. Then, with that spiritual habit in mind, we spend 3 months creating experiences, activities, and tools to help kids and teenagers grow in that specific area. Now, because these habits are so significant, we found the most strategic places for these habits to live on your calendar, and we're going to show them to you.
All right, every fall we focus on spending time with others. It's the time of year when students are thinking about school, classes, joining new teams, and the people that they want to spend time with. So much is changing in their social lives each fall that it's the perfect place to get them talking about how to engage in healthy community with others.
And so that's why this year in Grow Students, we've got a group activity that is called the Bigger, Better, Best Challenge. It is based on the classic youth group game where students start with a small object like a paper clip or something and work together to trade it for the biggest, coolest, wildest items that they can. We will give you lots of ideas to turn this into a cool competition to help your students or even your small groups build better relationships at the start of the school year.
Every winter, we focus on the habit of knowing and using your gifts because the holidays are coming up, which means your community is filled with chances to serve and give. This year in Grow Students, we've got the over-the-top challenge where students can think through how they can use their own gifts, talents, and resources to help others. Together, they'll identify a need in their community and come up with creative ways to address that need by using over-the-top generosity. And in the next section of this walkthrough, you'll see how this ties in with a series we'll also be teaching.
Every spring, once you've built some trust with teenagers over the course of the year, it's time to go deeper by focusing on the spiritual habit of spending time with God. So this year, we've created a 40-day in the rhythm prayer prompts. This prayer activity can help your students pray in some new, unique ways, and you can use the prompts in a whole bunch of different ways. And just like the last one, this discipleship activity ties in with a series that you'll be teaching as well.
All right, and lastly, we have the spiritual habit of sharing your story. We focus on the spiritual habit every summer because it's the time of year when churches are often thinking about mission experiences. Plus, it's a great time to get students excited about the upcoming year and the ways that they can share the story of Jesus with others. This year in Grow Students, we have an activity called the Long Story Short Pop-Up, where teenagers will explore how to share their stories using art, music, poetry, and more. In the activity guide, we'll walk you through how to do this one in person through social media or in lots of other ways.
So that's what the Grow Discipleship Strategy looks like. But now let's talk about the actual teaching strategy.
Each year, it's important to plan ahead for the topics and scriptures you plan to cover with your students. It's tempting to spend your Wednesday afternoons Googling free youth ministry sermons or punching some prompts into an AI generator, but we think you can do better than that, and we are here to help.
When we fail to plan ahead with our teaching calendar, we run the risk of missing really important ideas or teaching only what interests us personally and ultimately failing to give our students a full holistic view of God. And that is a really big deal. So please plan ahead. We suggest that you establish a bank of topics that you want to cover and how often you'd like to cover each of them. So if you're using Grow Students, you might know that we have a bank of topics we choose from every single year. These are broad topics that can all be covered in tons of different ways, which helps your planning process not get too overwhelming while also giving you the flexibility that you need to give your students some fresh ideas and perspectives that don't feel repetitive every year.
All right, and once you know the big picture topics that you want to cover each year, place them on the calendar in the months where you think they make the most sense. But this is big. Don't forget to consider how you can strategically align your teaching calendar with the spiritual habits you are focusing on each quarter. This is why you're putting everything on one board so you can see how every aspect of your ministry works together.
Now, here's a quick overview of this year's teaching calendar from Grow Students Curriculum, Volume 7, and why we've placed every single teaching series where we have placed them. For this video, we're going to assume August is the beginning of a new school year, but if you happen to be in a hemisphere where your school year starts in January, that is fine. With Grow and with this whole strategy, you can get started anytime. It is all customizable. So, in August, we are kicking things off with the Grow Students Scope and Sequence and a new school year and the fall quarter, where we're focusing on the spiritual habit of spending time with others.
Since we're focusing on spending time with others, we like to focus on friendships or relationships in some way. So this August, we're starting off with a series from the Gospels about what we can learn from the way Jesus treated and interacted with his friends. Then in September, we're doing a series on doubt called Beyond Belief, where we'll explore how Moses and the Israelites encountered both faith and doubt during their enslavement and escape from Egypt. And then to wrap up the first quarter, in October, we'll talk about what it means to be a leader in our series Most Likely To, where we'll introduce students to a few godly leaders in Scripture and explore how we can become godly leaders too.
Then in November, we begin our winter quarter and our focus on the spiritual habit of using your gifts to serve. So with that spiritual habit in mind, we often spend a lot of time this quarter talking about how to love others well. So this month, we will do a series on generosity called Over the Top, which pairs with that Over the Top challenge discipleship activity that you heard about. In this one, we will read through 1 Thessalonians and explore how generosity is about so much more than just money. Then in December, we will transition into a Christmas series called Grateful, where we'll reflect on all of the things that we can thank God for during the Christmas season, especially, of course, the gift of Jesus. Then in January, we will wrap up our focus on knowing and using your gifts by talking about identity with a series called Beneath the Surface. It's about the sometimes scary process of discovering who we are and who we want to become, and we'll challenge students to explore who God created us to be and not just what people might see on the surface.
Then in February, to kick off our spring quarter in the spiritual habit of spending time with God, we're getting a little more focused in dealing with some heavier subjects. Next up is a series called Rhythm. In this 4-week series, we'll explore 4 different rhythms we can create in order to grow spiritually. This is the series that pairs with the In the Rhythm prayer prompts we mentioned during the Discipleship Strategy section. After that, in March, we'll do a series called Justified, where we explore some stories in the New Testament that help us figure out how God invites us to respond when we're angry. And that helps us decide whether our anger is justified or not. After that, we're ready to start talking about Easter. This year, our Easter series is a 2-week series called Glow, and it's all about how Jesus brings light into darkness. Then to wrap up this quarter in April, we've got a series on family called Enough. In the series, we'll look at a few stories from Acts and the epistles and explore how we can relate to our actual families in ways that mirror how God's family is invited to treat each other.
Then in May, we will kick off our summer quarter and the spiritual habit of sharing your story with a series called I Am. This one's about the 4 Jesus I Am statements and why they matter for our lives today. Then in June, we've got our annual series about sharing your faith. This year, it is called Worth Sharing, and it compares the ministry of Samuel the prophet with passages from the early church, and it's really going to challenge your students to share their faith with both their words and with their actions. And then finally, in July, we've got a series that covers a topic that so many of your students are going to relate to. It's called Not Okay, and it's a series about how we can turn to God in times of stress and times of anxiety.
All right, so that's what our teaching strategy looks like for this year, but you get to make this strategy work for you. So go look at your church calendar. Figure out what ideas, stories, and books of the Bible you want to teach, in what order and in which months. Find out if your church is doing any church-wide campaigns or teaching series that will affect your students and adjust your schedule accordingly. Think about the rhythms of teenagers in your community and make adjustments to fit your church's unique needs.
And don't forget to compare what you're teaching to your discipleship strategy to see how you can use both of these strategies to support and reinforce each other and not compete with each other. And remember, this is all customizable, so take the things that work for you and adjust the things that don't.
All right, the point is this: you need a teaching strategy. And when you align your teaching strategy with your discipleship strategy, you'll be able to focus and reinforce these big ideas more effectively. So go ahead. Make it your own, and then start dreaming about some of the specifics of what your teaching could look like this year. In this next part, we're going to talk about your weekly environments.
So as you start to develop your teaching strategy in more detail, adding some interesting weekly environment elements like special songs, visuals, recurring ideas, and on-theme games can help you enhance that month's teaching. This is super important because the right environment can really help what you're teaching stick in the minds of your students. So for this round of planning, we are assigning a monthly theme to every teaching series that directly complements the content that you will be teaching.
And when we say themes, there's a lot that we could include. We're talking decor, graphics, background music, games, worship set lists. The possibilities are almost endless. But remember, if you're using Grow Students curriculum, we've already thought about all of this for you. And if you're not using Grow, that's cool too. Feel free to steal our ideas and make them happen on your own. Either way, here are the monthly themes that we're doing in Grow this year and how they connect to what we're teaching.
In August, when we're talking about friendships and our series Going Places, we will base our theme on something that is always better with friends, and that is a good road trip.
When we talk about doubt and questions in the September series Beyond Belief, we really want students to see themselves in the Exodus story. So all of our visuals for this series are centered on the compelling and memorable visuals we get from that story.
Then in October, when we talk about leadership, we are going to use a theme that helps students think about some of the ways they and their peers are already leading, and that's at school. That's why Most Likely To has a really fun school spirit theme.
For the series called Over the Top, we'll use a theme of extreme stunts to help us think about the ways we can be extremely generous, but not just for show.
In December, for our Christmas series called Grateful, we're keeping it pretty simple. The theme is Christmas gifts, but the focus, of course, is not on all the stuff we get. It's about gifts that are so much better than just that.
Our identity series called Beneath the Surface has a deep sea theme. That's because the metaphor of the ocean helps us explore the wonder, mystery, and sometimes fear that we might experience when we're trying to figure out who we are and what God has for our futures.
Next up is our series on spiritual growth called Rhythm. Of course, this series uses a music theme as we focus on how to build strong rhythms in our spiritual habits.
In Justified, we'll use a superheroes theme to help us process our anger in a God-honoring way. It's full of stories of superheroes wrestling with their anger, and sometimes in ways that caused harm, and sometimes in ways that led to something really good.
Our Easter series Glow uses a theme of light and darkness as we tell the story of Jesus' death, that is the dark part, and his resurrection, which is the light part, of course.
And since our series called Enough focuses on families, we're using the theme of family board games to help us talk about the ups, downs, tensions, and joys that our relationships with our families can contain.
The series I Am is all about Jesus telling us who he is in his own words. With that in mind, we'll use a theme of sounds and sound waves to help bring that idea to life.
All right, 2 series left. Our evangelism series, Worth Sharing, uses a social media theme to talk about how there are experiences and stories we'll share with the people who mean so much to us.
Then we'll wrap things up with Not Okay, which uses a puzzle and brain teasers theme as we talk about all the problems in life that cause us stress and anxiety and sometimes feel impossible to solve.
And that's the plan for Volume 7 of Grow Students. And remember, no matter which curriculum you're using, the point is you need a strategy for your weekly environments. And a great way to make your weekly environment more strategic is to give it a theme that complements what your monthly teaching is.
And whatever you decide to do for your students, just remember, you can be a lot more effective with your teaching strategy when you pair what you're teaching with that strategic monthly theme we've been talking about. And you can be a lot more efficient by planning all of those themes in advance, like a whole year at a time. So up next, we're going to move on from what happens each week, and we're going to talk about your special events.
Okay, we've already covered 3 areas that are all about students with our discipleship, teaching, and weekly environment strategies. But we've got one more strategy to talk about that relates directly to your students, and that is your event strategy.
Yeah, events are a pretty big deal for most youth ministries. They are a way to have fun, connect with students, get new students in the door, and create some excitement about your ministry. Now, those things are really important, but if we are honest, we probably know that we can overdo it sometimes with our events, you know?
Yeah, events matter, but we've got to keep things in perspective and think strategically. That's why we're fans of keeping your event strategy really simple, because you can make a bigger impact each year if you choose to do fewer events with more intentionality. Here's our recommendation for keeping your event strategy simple in youth ministry, and this is it. Do one event each quarter, plus a summer camp and missions experience. That's it.
Now, here's what that could actually look like on the calendar. So in the fall, we suggest doing a really fun all-night or half-night, if you're not an all-nighter fan, event to kick off the school year and help students build relationships with their peers and especially with their small groups. This aligns really nicely with the Spend Time with Others spiritual habit and our discipleship strategy and the friendship series that kicks off the school year. In Grow this year, that event is an all-nighter or a half-nighter called Comedy Night Live, an event inspired by stand-up and improv comedy and guaranteed to bring laughter to your group.
In the winter, remember that families are probably pretty busy leading up to the holidays, so do a simple, fun, and maybe even free event for students that allows them to make some holiday memories together with their friends. This year in Grow Students, we're doing a karaoke Christmas party full of singing games, activities, and your traditional Christmas festivities. But don't let your introverts get nervous because you don't have to be a performer to have tons of fun and participate in this event.
Then in the spring, when you're focusing on the spiritual habit of spending time with God, it's a great time to host a weekend retreat, either offsite or in host homes. This year in Grow Students, we are giving you everything you need to plan that retreat, along with the teaching and small group content that you'll need to plan your main sessions. The series for this year is called By Name, and it is all about knowing and being known by our Creator.
And in the summer, remember that you've got a busy summer ahead of you, and so do your family. So host another simple and fun event that gets students out of the house so they can have a blast together. This year in Grow, that event is a super fun Olympic-themed event called World Record. After that, you'll also want to add a summer camp to your board. We've got an awesome series in Grow Students this year called Legends that connects to that, and a missions experience. Whether you're looking to do an international mission experience or a local mission experience, we've got all of the resources and tutorials covered for you.
Your event strategy is most effective when it works for you, your students, and your church. So feel free to adjust and adapt to make all of this fit in your context. And now that we've wrapped up our student strategy, let's talk about volunteers.
We're convinced there are 7 ways to invest in volunteers, and all 7 of them need to be represented on your annual calendar. It might sound overwhelming at first, but it doesn't have to be, we promise.
We believe that if we want to be effective as pastors and leaders, we need to get really serious about investing in and empowering the volunteers we lead. When we do that, we can multiply our influence, increase the capacity of our ministry, and give kids and teenagers a better shot at building a lifelong faith. And all the research shows us how young people need not just one pastor, but a whole community of adults who are all investing in them and in their faith. Plus, if you want volunteers to invest in kids and teenagers, it's probably a good idea for you to invest in your volunteers first.
When planning your year of investment in volunteers, you're going to need to consider these 7 things for volunteers: events, meetings, discussion groups, one-on-one conversations, tools, communication, and celebrations. And again, we know that sounds like a lot, but here's the thing. We can build all 7 of these areas into your calendar in ways that aren't overwhelming. We get it. We've been pastors and actually developed this strategy while we were still pastoring. We know you don't have countless hours to spend leading volunteers, so we want to help you be really intentional and strategic about doing things that require the least amount of work for the biggest impact.
So with that in mind, let's break down each of these 7 things and give you an idea of what's included in Grow for each of these areas. So first, we have volunteer events. We have just one of these each year on the calendar, and that's in August to kick off the school year. This volunteer kickoff event is designed to be your one major vision casting moment of the whole year. It comes with inspiration, practical training, helpful tools, and relationship building to get your team really off on the right foot. And with Grow, you already have everything that you need to pull it all off. So that's cool.
Next, we have meetings. Meetings are any environment where you are training volunteers on a specific subject related to their specific needs as a volunteer. If you can say it in an email, just send an email. Don't call a meeting. Save your meetings for the good stuff, the times when you want to teach, discuss, and spend time with your team. Our recommendation is getting together with your whole team every other month. So that's 6 times a year. With our August kickoff event, we can skip September and put the next meeting in October. Then, since no one wants to have an informational meeting in December, let's replace our meeting with a Christmas party. We can add a meeting in February and April, but since June is the end of the school year, let's have another party.
So that's 6 get-togethers with your team throughout the year, including your annual kickoff event and a couple of parties. That means you have 3 windows this year to train your team on something specific. So what do you want to train them on? Well, if you're using Grow, you have access to tons of volunteer meeting outlines on all sorts of helpful topics, and they all come with discussion questions for your team. However you decide to organize this is totally up to you, but here is the point. Plan to meet with your team throughout the year in whatever rhythm works best for you. And when you do meet with them, make sure to teach them something really, really helpful.
Next, we have discussion groups. A discussion group is a type of volunteer get-together that can transform your ministry's volunteer culture. In a volunteer discussion group, instead of training your volunteers like you're the expert, even though, of course, you are an expert, the goal is to ask questions that get your volunteers sharing stories, talking to each other, and helping each other solve their own problems. These discussion groups are about spotlighting your volunteers as the experts and learning from and with them for a change. How many of these groups you do each year will depend on how many volunteers that you have. We recommend doing them at least once a year, but no more than 6 times. And when you do them, schedule them during months when you don't already have an event, meeting, or party already scheduled.
Next, we've got one-on-one conversations with volunteers. These conversations are another way to connect with your volunteers, and we recommend putting these on your calendar every single week if you can, or at least every month. In these one-on-ones, the goal is to give feedback to your volunteers about how they're doing and to receive feedback from them about how your ministry is doing at equipping and supporting them.
Next, we have one of my favorite ways to invest in volunteers, and those are your celebrations. We are big believers that what you celebrate in ministry gets repeated, and that honoring your volunteers for who they are is a huge part of creating a volunteer culture that makes people want to serve with you. So each month, we recommend celebrating a weird holiday with your volunteers in a way that appreciates them or makes a fun memory with them. Maybe that's a DIY cupcake decorating station on National Cupcake Decorating Day, or a mysterious thank you card that can only be read in the mirror for Backwards Day. Whatever it is, the point is that you take time each month to make your volunteers feel cared for. And sending weekly thank you notes and monthly birthday cards are a great idea too.
Next, we've got communication, because if you're going to invest well in your volunteers, you need to communicate with them at least every week. So we've given you all of the emails for the entire year already written and designed, tons of volunteer tip videos, and a social media plan with images and captions already done for you to help you stay in touch with them. And new this year, we've got volunteer devotionals that go along with every single teaching series, so volunteers can follow along with a weekly devotional and grow alongside the teenagers that they lead.
And last but not least, volunteer tools. By this, we mean any resource you give your volunteers that makes their job easier. On the calendar, you'll see volunteer tools like a volunteer handbook, volunteer business cards, a volunteer survey, volunteer goals, and volunteer t-shirts. We suggest giving these tools away in August to begin the year and then refreshing them throughout the year or at your volunteer meetings.
And after that, you're done. A full year of volunteer strategy. Feel free to copy as much of our strategy and calendar as you'd like, then change the rest to fit your unique context. We hope this volunteer strategy honestly revolutionizes your ministry for the better, because remember, you are not just a pastor to kids or teenagers, you are a pastor to your volunteers too. And as we'll talk about in the next section, you're a pastor to families too.
Okay, you're almost there. The very last thing you need to strategize in your annual planning meeting is the thing we sometimes save until last, and that is how you'll engage parents, caregivers, and families in your ministry.
When it comes to families, let's be honest, we could probably all do a better job of engaging them. But we're about to unpack a framework for your family strategy that you can replicate and improve year after year to help you level up how you engage with families. So here we go. We are convinced the key to engaging and investing in parents and caregivers effectively is to plan an annual strategy in 7 ways, and they are the same 7 things that we talked about with volunteers, so hopefully they're easy to remember. That's family events, parent meetings, parent discussion groups, one-on-one conversations with families, parent tools, parent communication, and parent celebration. And when we say parent, just keep in mind we mean any caregiver who is in a parental role.
All right, let's start with events. Like we've already said, we recommend doing the fewest events you can manage for the biggest impact. Each year, we love the idea of doing just a handful of strategic events for parents, and we include those events each year and grow. In August, there's an open house designed to introduce new families to your ministry and expose them to your ministry philosophy and strategy.
Then in October each year, we recommend doing a parent and small group leader breakfast to help connect parents with the small group leaders of their kids or students. Together, they can understand their common goal, which is influencing and caring for the young person that they both love. We recommend doing this event in October each year because the school year is already in progress, because small groups are probably somewhat settled and consistent, and because there has been plenty of time for your small group leaders to actually meet and connect with families before that event actually happens.
And every January, we recommend hosting a parent workshop, an event where you provide parents and caregivers practical training on how to love, lead, and disciple their children. This year, our parent workshop in both Grow Students and Grow Kids is tackling the topic of how to use your gifts to serve as a family.
Next, we have parent meetings. Now, if you've been using the Grow strategy for a while, these are brand new in Volume 7. Meetings are any environment where you are delivering information to parents that they really need. There shouldn't be a ton of these on your calendar throughout the year, though. You might need to call an official parent meeting, maybe before a big event or a trip, or maybe during a crisis in your community, or during a big transition at your church. These are the moments when you have something important to share, and it really can't be done in an email. How many meetings you'll need and when you'll need them really depends on what's going on in your church and when.
And next, we've got parent discussion groups. Like the volunteer discussion groups, parent discussion groups are environments where you get to learn from and with real parents. We recommend doing 1 or 2 of these each year whenever your least busy months are for families. Once you've got parents in the room, ask questions to tap into their expertise as parents. What can you learn from them? What are their biggest struggles? How can you better serve them?
Next, we've got one-on-one conversations with parents, and these two are brand new to Grow. Like with parent meetings, these conversations with parents aren't necessarily things you can plan for in advance. They're usually things that happen kind of unexpectedly. So this could be because a family is in crisis, or as a response to a concerning behavior, or a parent has a question or a concern. You'll probably want to be ready for these to pop up at any time.
Okay, here's a 5th way to invest in families, and this one is brand new to Grow in this volume too. Just like we talked about the importance of celebrating volunteers, parents deserve to be celebrated too. Parenting can be difficult sometimes, and your church has the opportunity to help parents feel even more seen, encouraged, and supported. Each month, we recommend celebrating parents in ways that are inspired by the same weird holidays that you're using to celebrate your volunteers. So while you're setting up a DIY cupcake decorating station for your volunteers on National Cake Decorating Day, set one up for parents too, or send every parent a mysterious, encouraging note that can only be read in the mirror backwards for Backwards Day at the same time you're writing those individual cards for your volunteers. Whatever you do, the point is that you take time each month to make parents feel seen and cared for. And the good news, it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming.
Next, we've got communication, because just like we said for volunteers, if you're going to invest well in families, you do have to communicate with them. We recommend sending parents an email once every month with information about what's happening in your ministry and resources that will help serve and equip them as parents. In Grow, we've written and designed all of these emails for you, and we created a ton of parent tip videos that you can send to parents every month or refilm with members of your team. And new this year, just like we said for volunteers, we've got parent devotionals that go along with every single teaching series so that parents can follow a weekly devotional and grow alongside their kids or teenagers.
And last but not least, we've got parent tools. Throughout the year, there are so many helpful and practical tools you could give parents to help serve and equip them, but here are a few that Grow provides. In August, we recommend giving parents a parent handbook to better understand your ministry's mission and strategy. Volunteer business cards with the names, photos, and contact information of their kids' adult leaders, and an annual parent survey to help you learn about how to best serve and communicate with families. We recommend providing these same tools again in October at your breakfast event and having extras on hand for whenever you need them.
And there you have it. Your final assignment is this: plan out your annual family strategy for the year, but then take a look at everything you've done and accomplished in this planning meeting. Is there anything that you would like to change or tweak now that everything is up on the board and visible? Are there any pieces of your calendar that you'd like to get feedback on before you finalize them? Is there anyone who couldn't make it to this meeting, but whose voice you'd really like to hear from before you finish all of your annual planning?
If you've answered yes to any of those questions, go do something about it. Don't let this just become another project that's left unfinished. Really, go do it. Make it awesome. We know that it's a lot to do and think about, but as the year goes by, your calendar fills up, you will be so happy that you did this.
And with that, thank you so much for hanging with us, but more importantly, thank you for all that you do in your ministry. Your work is so important, and we are so excited that you've taken the time to be more intentional, strategic, and prepared for this upcoming year of ministry. You are amazing, seriously.
All right, see you later.
Bye.